It's Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Oh, we got a good one for you today on KCMO Talk Radio. I'm Kevin Keatsman. This is Uncanceled. It is great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. As you do each and every day, another outstanding show by Pete Mundo this morning, taking away all the great topics that I have lined up and ready to go. Mostly, here's what I do every day. I mostly just take stuff on it. Oh, Pete's on it. Nope, there it goes in the trash. Pete did it. Nope, yeah, there it goes in the trash. I mean, dude covers it all, but hopefully we will find some really fresh material for you here as there's some interesting news and things going on today that will be affecting our lives in, I guess we would say, an inquisitive or entertaining kind of way. Later in the show, we're going to get into some fun stuff about ranking sports venues. That's very interesting about the Royals and Chiefs. We'll talk a little college basketball and some other fun stuff with Mark. The Major League Baseball season has already started. A game has occurred in Japan. The Dodgers have beaten the Cubs 4-1. The Royals open a week from Thursday at Kauffman Stadium. We're going to be broadcasting live from there before the season opener at Kauffman Stadium, so we're looking forward to that. But we start today with something that used to be a little bit of a passion of mine. If I have one regret in my youth growing up and going to college and all those things, I didn't study enough history. I didn't appreciate it as a student enough. And as I've gotten older, I want to learn more and more and more about history. But there was one thing that happened that I knew a lot about at the time. I have not studied this for 20 years, maybe longer than that, 30. But it was sort of an obsession because it seemed so important to my mom. My mom is 91 years old, and her and my dad were devout Catholics. And growing up, Mass was a big part of our life. And John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president in the United States. And there was a feeling among Catholics in this country that a glass ceiling had been shattered of some sort, that this was a really big deal. Now, they were Irish Catholic. We were mostly German Catholic. But as I mentioned yesterday on St. Patrick's Day, I'm a quarter Irish. It all seems to kind of fit together. But I was not alive when JFK was assassinated. But I'm pretty sure I was on the way. I think I was born about 7 or 8 months after JFK was assassinated. And over the next few years, what ensued as I was growing up is, and I can remember as early as like kindergarten years, there were still investigations and there were ongoing things, and then there were more assassinations. And I vaguely remember some talk in the house about the Vietnam War, but I'm too young for that as well. And all these wild things happened in the 60s. And largely growing up in the 70s, you would hear a lot about it. They would try to teach some of it in school, but I didn't really care about the school part. It was what my parents were talking about, what people were talking about. And all the way through the 80s and into the 90s, it was one thing after another in pop culture. There were books, there were movies made about the JFK assassination. And nobody in their right mind could look at that Zapruder film and the things that happened with the JFK assassination and not walk away and say, none of this makes sense. The lone shooter who wasn't a very good marksman was behind JFK up in the school book depository and hit him in a perfect kill shot. And somehow his head and body went the other direction when it happened. And all these things that we've gone over and over and over on. Then they catch Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh, and he gets killed right away. I mean, this stuff's crazy. But for the most part, it went on and on and on. And it's kind of faded in American culture. Listeners right now that are much younger than me probably don't have a lot of care about this issue or place any importance on it. We have listeners that are older than me, too, that were alive when JFK was assassinated. I feel sure that there are members in our listening audience right now that voted for JFK. Now, you're going to be considerably older than me, obviously, but I believe we have plenty or had plenty of JFK voters that wound up being Republicans. JFK, if he were president today, clearly would be a Republican. This isn't even up for debate. He'd clearly be a Republican. But this thing happened, and the cover-up seemed to be everywhere, and we know about the corruption during the Vietnam War. And then the biggest scandal was Watergate, which wasn't nearly as big a scandal as war or assassinations or the CIA or the things going on at the FBI. And it reminds me of today. Because we had 20 or 30 years where we didn't think a lot about the CIA wrecking everybody's lives or the FBI coming for you or deep state corruption within the government, we gave that up for a while. We thought it was cleaned up. We thought journalism cleaned it up. Journalism caught Watergate. Okay, the Republicans have been caught. We got some Democrats in charge. Jimmy Carter's a good guy. Reagan, by and large, was seen as he had Iran-Contra, but was largely seen as a non-corrupt figure. We had a pretty good run. Bill Clinton was scandalous personally, but a lot of people didn't look at that necessarily until maybe afterwards with his charity and things, that he was completely corrupt trying to make money. But this is all circled back, and a lot of the things that were happening when JFK was assassinated are happening now. They tried to kill Trump. We saw 2 assassination attempts last year. You can't convince me 100% that those are 2 lone wolves that did that, just 2 crazy people out of nowhere. The second dude, the guy down in Florida, has too many connections and too many visits to Ukraine alone to say, well, there can't be anything going on there. It's just a lone wolf. Generally speaking, we don't believe in the lone wolf. And part of the reason is many of us grew up around the JFK theory. There's just a lone wolf. It's just one guy. It was no big deal. Wasn't the Soviets, wasn't communism, wasn't the CIA, wasn't an internal job, wasn't LBJ. Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president that took over, could be the guy in the crosshairs, because later today, the entire JFK files are going to be released. And I've said all along, when these are released, one of 2 things is going to happen. Our jaw is going to hit the floor, and we're going to say, boy, we were right. Our government is corrupt as hell. Or we're going to say, snooze. There's nothing there. All the good stuff's been burned, destroyed, shredded, and is gone. But we have this quote from White House Deputy Press Secretary Kush Desai, who was on News Nation about an hour ago or 2 hours ago. And he said about the release of these files later today, quote, "The American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see." Unquote. Okay, that's the deputy press secretary. That's a Trump official. He's in charge, doing interviews, talking about the JFK files. And it still doesn't clarify things for me, because I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out that there's nothing there, that it's conclusive, that there is no government interference, that there is no communism, CIA, FBI, LBJ. There are people all over social media now that think they know, and I don't know that anybody knows or whatever. The one person that it looks like it's going to point to most and treat the worst is President Lyndon Johnson. That somehow his fingerprints are going to be all over this thing in taking the White House away from JFK. That won't surprise me, I guess, but I've never believed in my life that we would know. I've always just chalked this up as, yes, we believe that we're a free and fair country. We have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to a certain extent, we trust our government to not come after us, that we live our free lives. But I've never thought that with JFK. I've always thought there is something there. There's more than a there, and there's probably more than a there with Martin Luther King and RFK. And it might be the same people, and we might get all the same files. Now, the King family is trying very hard to not have his files released. He was not a great person. He was sex-crazed, drug-using. Many people would describe maybe as a pervert. That's been well documented. It doesn't get talked about a lot because you can't say those things about Martin Luther King, right? But the family desperately does not want any of his files to be released. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants it all. He's like, bring it. And RFK is convinced that he knows exactly what happened to his dad and the people that were involved. He's pretty sure that he knows, and he wants everything out. Today, we're going to learn about JFK. And I wouldn't have even brought it up on the show today, except this deputy press secretary gave this quote earlier today. And because he did, because I just figured this was going to be a snooze. I was like, more of the same with JFK. Anything that was damning that the government had is destroyed. It's gone. If the deep state were involved in the assassination of Kennedy, wouldn't they be involved in getting rid of all the documentation of such? Doesn't that make sense? They would have covered it all up very well. And statute of limitations are gone. Most of the people involved are dead. So none of that has any relevance on a day like this. And maybe, I don't know, Kush Desai. If he walked in the room, I wouldn't know him. But he is the White House deputy press secretary, and he just gave an official interview where he said the American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see today. I have not heard that. I've not heard that from anybody. And, most of the people were saying, well, there's things going to be released, And as they're released, I think we'll say, okay, well, this is interesting, or maybe that little piece is interesting. But shocked by what they see? First of all, if it is the CIA and was an internal hit job on our president, that's not going to shock me. I don't know how it's going to shock me. If it's nothing at all, it won't shock me. I felt all along it's not going to be something in the middle. I guess it would shock me if it's just mediocre and down the middle. I think it's going to be something or nothing and not anywhere in between, now that he has said that. Really, really, really interesting. 913-408-7957. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, but you know what? More and more, these things that people call conspiracy theories, they're not conspiracies. They're almost all true. And isn't this a great time to be alive in America? That we have an administration and an apparatus in D.C. that absolutely seems to be on a mission to be honest, transparent, and forthright. You know what the Trump administration doesn't do? They don't walk around giving news conferences saying, we're going to be honest and transparent in everything that we do. You ever notice they don't ever say that? It's because they're doing it. I'm convinced that Trump has put a mandate out with all his officials. Don't ever tell them how transparent we're going to be. Just be transparent. Trump's had people under him. He's had J.D. Vance say things. He's had all these people say things publicly. Elon Musk, that you wonder, is Trump mad at him for saying that? And I think Trump's just at a point now where I don't care. If you think it's the truth and it's the truth, tell people. Tell the American public everything. It truly is the best policy. Our leaders have been wrong for generations. They think we can't handle the truth. They think we can't take it. We can. It sounds insane to say it. I hate to even utter these words, but the truth will set you free. If we want true freedom in America, we need complete truth and transparency at the highest levels of our what's been to this point controlling federal government. That's how we get less control. That's how we get a smaller government. That's how we lower the budget deficit. That's how we do all these things. It all starts with being honest and truthful. And when people walk around, and it's the same thing covering sports. The second a team around here would hire a new coach or manager, they'd walk in and go, I'm going to be open and honest about everything with the players, with the media, with the fans. We're going to do it. No, they were never even close to that. 90% of all the good stuff never got out. Nobody is like this. Nobody. Trump is. His administration is. And we're going to find out today exactly what this is with the JFK files. Love to hear your thoughts on what we may see. If you've got a comment, we'd love to hear from you right now. 913-408-7957. That's 913-408-7957. We're always welcoming new callers. If you're new to the show, come on in. Don't be afraid. Maybe you don't care at all about JFK. Tell me that too. But many of us at one point in our lives been obsessed with this, and apparently today is the day we're going to find something out. And according to the White House Deputy Press Secretary, we're about to be shocked later today in the United States. Talking about JFK, the files are coming out this afternoon, and the White House is saying that Americans will be shocked. We shall see. I honestly can't emphasize enough how much my mother loved JFK and how much she talked about him when I was a kid, when I was growing up. Everything about him. The politics, being Catholic, she thought he was good looking, the tragedy of being assassinated. I mean, this was an iconic, great American hero when the parties were very similar in those days. There wasn't that much difference between a Democrat and a Republican in those days. It has changed significantly since then. A lot of folks want to chime in. Let's get to the phones and do this. Jerry is up first today on Uncanceled. Good morning, Jerry. How are you, sir?
Just terrific, I think. I was 17 when JFK was killed. Grew up a Catholic, was in a Catholic high school when it all happened. And about 2.5 years later, I was down in Grand Prairie, Texas for a Navy physical and went over to the rifle range where Oswald supposedly practiced. And the guy I talked to didn't want to say anything. He didn't know who I was, and he was very reluctant. And all he said was, Oswald couldn't hit the back of the rifle range with that rifle.
Yeah.
That's how poor a shot he was. And he just looked at me and kind of smiled, and he just said, he wasn't the guy. He just wasn't the guy. So, and that's just always stuck with me. And I don't know if I've read everything there is to read about it, but there were lots of people involved with that shooting that died mysteriously right after all that. So, it's really no different today. People know something, they just they commit suicide or whatever the hell they're going to do.
Right. Jerry, what do you think the headline will be from these documents released today?
Well, I hope it. I hope it. And it's just my opinion that I think the CIA and the mafia had a lot to do with his assassination. I hope that comes out. I just do. I mean, I'm absolutely sure that everybody who was involved with that has passed away. So there's nobody that could be, I'll say, indicted, personally offended, or whatever. But I think it was an inside job. I always thought that, even as a kid, there were just too many people saying there were too many shots from too many places that would say that's
Yep.
just a single shooter idea. So I hope that comes out. I'll be disappointed if that doesn't happen. So,
Awesome. Thank you,
anyway.
Jerry. Great call, buddy. Thank you for sharing that with me. And it would fit the Trump narrative. Trump is in the midst of trying to change our government from one that's been oppressive, running your life, to something that's going to be open and honest, getting rid of the deep state. And it would fit what he's trying to do with this country. It would also make sense that every president to this point has not released this information, because most presidents would take office and say, you know what, the American people don't need to know that their government was bad. But at this point, I think it's a benefit. I can see through the years where there were times you wouldn't want the American public to know that the American government is this corrupt. Right now, today in 2025, it's the best damn thing for us. Let us know if the government did this and was involved in this. We Americans need to know that our government has not been stellar and perfect like they tell us they are. I think it would be very, very good for us. Here is Milo in Overland Park. Hi, Milo. How are you today?
Good morning, Kevin. I'll try not to keep you too long. I agree with a lot what your last caller said. In 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated, I was working as a young man in North Kansas City, and we were all shocked. And 3 years later, I joined the Overland Park Police Department, and then a year later, I went to Vietnam, and I had talked to several of the snipers who worked in Vietnam, and they all agreed with your last caller that they didn't think that Oswald was competent enough to do what he did. So when the report comes out, I swear, I hope that nothing internally was done to
The government.
to kill Kennedy, but.
Yeah. But you fear it may you fear it may be the case, don't you?
Yes, sir. I do.
Yeah. Excellent.
And, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
The FBI agents and the FBI agents in charge, when I was working here in Overland Park, they were really, really great people in Kansas City, Missouri. But some of them really had to be tight-lipped, so
Yeah.
you can understand
All right.
that.
Appreciate it, man. Great call, Milo. Call me anytime, buddy. Appreciate you very much. Let's check in with Randy in Napoleon. Hi, Randy. Good morning.
Hey, anytime you have trouble, they always say follow the money. The truth is Kennedy was going to put a silver certificate out in place of the Federal Reserve note, and he showed that silver certificate about 2 weeks before he passed away. If you want to know, probably my supposition is that they're going to find it was connected to the monetary system and him trying to change it. Trump came out and said that he was going to audit the Federal Reserve, and then suddenly he gets shot in the ear. So it's not a coincidence, I don't think. Follow the money, you'll find the problem.
Okay, great call, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Jeff's in Arizona. We got about a minute, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, LBJ's name's all over this. Before COVID, I wouldn't believe in any conspiracy theory. Today, just tell me what you got, man. I believe we let 9/11 happen. I believe we let Pearl Harbor happen. You name it. Yeah. I don't think we're going to find the truth today, but I think we assassinated a president. We do it in other countries. Why wouldn't we do it here in the United States?
All right.
Enjoy.
Great call, Jeff. I got to stop you right there. We're up against great call. I think maybe in this case, I'm still not a 9/11 inside job guy, and I certainly don't think that about Pearl Harbor. This is 95.7 KCMO, Uncanceled. We're back with more right after this. All right, this is fun. I enjoy talking about topics that people are interested in and want to join in the conversation in. We'll get back to the phones in just a moment. I'm going to go to my mom's today when this comes out, because I'm telling you, this is going to mean a lot to her. I'm going to hang with her and see what she thinks, and we're going to talk about it, and she's going to tell me exactly what she was doing that day and how she heard about it. I'm pretty sure she was vacuuming, and the TV was on in the background, and she heard a breaking. It was probably Walter Cronkite or somebody broke in, and it just devastated her. It devastated everyone. I was just telling Mark, I'm older than Mark, that growing up, Kennedy's picture was in all our schools. I mean, and they taught us about this. It was like, it didn't matter. I wasn't born yet. It didn't matter. It was in the American conscience for so long, and people were so obsessed with the Kennedy assassination. And then I don't think I ever felt any of the air come out of the balloon until I saw the Seinfeld episode where they spoofed it with the baseball players, Keith Hernandez getting spit on, and he's riding in a car in a convertible, and his head snaps back when he got spit upon. It's one of the funniest Seinfeld episodes if you know all of the theories around the JFK assassination. It's absolutely hysterical. It's very good. Mark had a teacher who has a JFK website. Is this right?
Yeah, Mr. Quinlan, Casey Quinlan. He's got this website, projectjfk.com, and he was my current events teacher. He was also a history teacher and government teacher.
Okay.
So, yeah, we had a whole semester diving in to the JFK assassination. That was the current events. Of course, we did some other stuff, but that was we were just going into it. We had all the documentaries, we had books that we were reading, and it was a good semester. I liked that.
And you're convinced there was a shooter on the grassy knoll?
I think that there was a second shooter. That's what I'm most excited to see today, if there was the second shooter. If not, then I'm going to be a little disappointed.
And do you think they knew if there was a second shooter, do you think they knew who it was and will be identified, and they just let that guy go?
I think that was probably a part of it.
Because if it was an inside job, that'd probably be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's projectjfk.com?
Yep.
Is his site? Oh, let's go. Everybody get in on this, man. Let's see what's going to happen there. I really was not excited about this because I just thought it would be a dud. And the reason we're talking about this today is White House Deputy Press Secretary Kush Desai just said a couple hours ago on a live television interview, quote, "The American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see when the JFK files are released this afternoon." All right, I guess we'll have to believe that guy. I don't know who that guy is, but that's okay. We'll believe him. Here is Dan in Overland Park on Uncanceled. This is KCMO. Hi, Dan.
Morning.
Morning.
Hey, I liked what you said earlier about the complete transparency that you think Trump has ordered for his whole administration. The reason it's great, I mean, you always hear from the lefty dummies about all the lying he does. The lefties just don't get it. He's a fundamentally honest man, and I think his term is going to show that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, my overwhelming thought is I've just sat here and covered people my whole life in sports and now in politics or news, and the ones that tell you how transparent they're going to be all the time aren't. They're doing that because they know they're not. We just went through 4 years of Biden's people telling us how much they were going to tell us how transparent and honest they were. I've never heard Trump say it. I'm not sure I've ever heard him use the word transparent. And I haven't heard the new press secretary use it. She just goes out there and fills it up, man, and spews facts. They all do. Stephen Miller, you kidding me? Mundo did a segment this morning. That Stephen Miller stuff is so great. I did my podcast on him today. This guy's phenomenal. He just goes out there and spits the truth every day. He doesn't have to tell you he's being transparent. You can watch him and you know it.
It's easy to be transparent when you're not lying to the entire nation like the previous administration.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. When you're telling the facts and the truth, you nailed it. Great call, buddy. Thank you. That was outstanding. That is exactly right. Here's Jonathan in Kansas City on KCMO Talk Radio. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Kevin. I hope it'll be enlightening, whatever comes out, and informative. My concern is, like that couple callers ago said, like after COVID, like what isn't our government willing to do to discredit credible reports? So my worry is, let's say that the Democratic insiders were involved in killing one of their own and killing JFK, like LBJ. I'm worried that the Democratic Party will do everything and anything to try to discredit it. They'll say, well, it's disinformation. It's from Trump. You can't trust it. They'll have the media, as their lapdogs. Just like when the Hunter Biden story came out, they had 50 intelligence officials come out and say, well, that's Russian disinformation. And then the truth finally came out years later. But when anybody tried to say anything, they said, no, we got to shut that talk down. This is disinformation. I wonder if something bombshell comes out, they'll just say, well, maybe that's from Putin or something. They will come up with any kind of disinformation theory.
So I love what you're saying, and here's what, because I think you're right. Here's where I'll differ just a little bit. I'm not going to see this as a party issue. These parties have changed too much over the last 70, 60 years for me to believe that. Okay, this is going to be, has our federal government historically been lying to us, or has it not? And to me, that's not a Republican or Democrat thing on this issue. Even if it's an inside Democrat job, they're a different party today than they were then. Would it make Democrats look bad? Maybe, but I don't think a lot of people are going to connect the dots. I think if this is a government inside job and we're learning about that there were people involved on the inside, I think what we're going to have and what will be good for Americans is to not trust their government when they tell us stuff. When they tell you you have to wear a mask, when they tell you to put plastic up at the counter like it's going to help you during COVID, like the virus can't travel through the air. It's insane that you have to take a shot, that you have to get out of the military, that you have to do this. We've got to get to a place in America where we are skeptical of our federal government. It is our right as citizens. They work for us, and we should be skeptical. That doesn't mean they don't do good things. That doesn't mean we should not trust them at anything they do. But we need to reestablish in this country a real skepticism that is good for us. And this can help. If that's what this is, this could really help that.
Maybe it'll depend a lot on who they would implicate. I think if they implicated LBJ, I think a lot of Democrats would strongly come to his defense, only because they see him much the same way they see FDR. Those are their heroes. Now, if it's some no-name Democrat, maybe it's not as big of a deal. But if it's going to be LBJ, I think they will come home to the trenches to defend him.
That'll be interesting to see, because I think it's well established and readily agreed to by every historian that LBJ was maybe the worst human being to ever be president. Like, just a horrible person.
But you talk to a lot of Democrats, and I agree with you on that. You talk to a lot of Democrats, and they a lot of them revere him in almost a similar way that they revere FDR or even Woodrow Wilson, which is kind of scary because all three of those figures were huge authoritarians, which tells you a lot about kind of the ideology they believe. That's
right. Yep, that's what they want. Thank you. Great call, buddy. Appreciate that. Next up is Jerry in Olathe. Hi, Jerry. How are you today? Oh, did I not hit it? Oh, I didn't hit it right. I'm sorry. Greg, we got Greg in Overland Park. I'm sorry. Hey, Greg, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, and thanks for the call. Hey, I think this whole thing is going to be very interesting, and I always wonder what the family's going to think about it. Caroline Kennedy's direct daughter, obviously, of JFK, so it's probably going to be painful for her, obviously. On the other hand, Robert F. Kennedy, he's been wanting to get this out. RFK Jr. been wanting to get this out for a long time. So I think we're going to find out maybe somebody on the Warren Commission was really, behind the cover-up. Did you know, by the way, that Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission, Kevin?
You know what? I did know that, but it's been years since anybody's mentioned it to me, so I didn't know it on the top of my brain to bring that up today. But yes, I have heard that. That's amazing, isn't it? And he later became president.
Yeah, he was a very young congressman at the time. He was picked to be in the Warren Commission. I've heard comments that Alan Welsh Dulles, who was part of the CIA, was trying to deflect a lot of things. He probably had a lot of things that he was covering up. And I just wonder what the family's going to think about this. Yeah. What do you think is going to be the most shocking, by the way? What do you think?
I've thought all along it's going to be a dud. I've been going on the assumption that anything that was good and informative has already been trashed and burned and ripped up and thrown away. I figured if they were good enough to carry it out, they're good enough to cover it up, even in the archives. So I've always felt that. I thought this day was going to be a giant dud, and it may be. It may be a complete dud. But this White House Deputy Press Secretary just said a couple hours ago, the American people are truly going to be shocked at what they see. So I don't know. I've got hopes now that what we're going to see is that, I shouldn't say hopes. You can't change whatever it is we're going to see. But if it shows the American people that our government was involved in some way, I think it will be good for us where we are today in a society where we have all this, thanks for the call, all this social media, all this information readily available at our fingertips. We're in an information age. We can handle it. We can handle it. Look, I'm not even saying it's good. What kids see at a young age on their phone and video game violence and movies and whatever, we can argue whether this is good for us or not, okay? But I do think knowing what our government is doing is good for us in almost every single possible way. Here is Jim in Blue Springs on Uncanceled. Hi, Jim.
Hey, George Herbert Walker Bush, old man Bush, the first one was president. He was in the CIA back then when that happened, and his grandpa was one of the founding fathers, or great-grandpa was one of the founding fathers of the monetary system that we use now. And then, like you said, they didn't want to stop with the silver certificate dollar instead.
Well, and you've named another family that Donald Trump doesn't care about protecting. Like, there's nobody Trump, like every president we've had since then clearly didn't want this information out there for whatever reason. Like they were protecting something, whether it was people that they were friends with, people that were in their party, whatever it may have been. There's not a single person on earth, except for the families involved in the Trump administration right now, that Donald Trump cares about. If they were involved, he'll put it out there. He does not care.
Yep.
And that's on them because they've done this to Trump. Okay, let's make very clear that Donald Trump 2.0 is what he is because of what the deep state has done to him the last decade. This is why him sitting out 4 years may have been the greatest thing that happened in our lifetime. That stolen, fraudulent election, whatever you want to call it, may be the greatest thing that ever happened because he's come back and said, everyone is against me. I'm not holding back on any of this. We're going for all of it, and I love it. Here's Chris in Kansas City. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Issues. I like that, man. Hey, I don't want to say study this, but my understanding of what I believe is that I think it was some insiders. It has something to do with the involvement with Vietnam. I think there's something some people wanted to do with that, and they needed to get Kennedy out of the way. And that's why I feel about it. And the same thing about the Martin Luther King. A lot of people don't speak about how his character was. He had a real good right-hand man by the name of Ralph Abernathy. Nobody talks about him. Ralph Abernathy wrote a book about King. They shut him down, ostracized him and everything. So, yeah, I'm waiting to see what comes out of this.
Awesome. Me too. Great call, buddy. Thank you. Call me anytime, okay?
Okay.
Appreciate it. Love the input. This is fun. You're listening to Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio. All right, we got time for one more, and then we got to get to Mark. We got some college basketball to talk about and a couple of other cool things. Here is Brian. We're talking about the JFK files being released today. A Trump official says America's going to be shocked later today. We shall see. Brian, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Hey, so I just want to know the people's motivation who were involved, and I don't know if we're actually going to get that from the documents that they released, but a bigger effect of this is I want to know if the military-industrial complex was involved because they wanted another war in Vietnam, what does that do to them today? Like, what does it do to Lockheed that in 1960 they were pressuring the CIA to get rid of JFK?
Yeah, if something like that happens, it'll be interesting to find out. You know, the other thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I remember as a kid hearing some of this, I didn't really know a lot about this because we went to Catholic Mass and whatnot all the time, but there was a lot of bias against Catholics. It was a pretty big deal that there was a Catholic president, that, okay, this barrier's been broken, and I don't think that's what it was, but heck, it could have been faith-related. It could have been some sort of conspiracy against Catholics. Who knows? Or the Pope.
Well, I agree with you, and there were so many other things that JFK was completely against, that the establishment was completely for. So there's so many people involved. I just want to know the motivation. I don't necessarily want to know who's involved. I want to know why.
Why? Yep. Well said. Great call. Thank you. It was basically pinned on the communists at the time, because it couldn't be internal. It couldn't be us. It's got to be those evil communists that did it. And maybe it was. Maybe we'll learn that. Maybe that's exactly what it was. All right, let's talk about venues in the United States. Major League Baseball, NFL, and NBA. Mark Van Sickle, a new ranking is out there. This is done by Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, and Facebook ratings. So I assume it's maybe visiting people to the park, not home fans. What do you figure is the number one sports venue in America?
I'd say probably Wrigley Field.
Lambeau Field.
Lambeau
is number one. Shockingly, number two is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. I have been told by Brian McRae since the day he played there that it is the best baseball park he ever played in, and I've never been.
I haven't been either. It looks cool, though. They do the walk over the bridge, right?
Yep. They built it 2 years before the Royals' renovation of Kauffman Stadium for less money than our renovation. And it's right. Busch Stadium in St. Louis is number 4. Ballparks did pretty well. The Oakland Coliseum is next to last. And dead last is Commanders Field in Landover, Maryland, where the Washington Commanders play. The Royals come in at number 33 and the Chiefs at 38.
Royals over Chiefs?
Yes.
Huh. I guess people that are traveling in, maybe with the fountains and everything, maybe that's...
My theory is Bronco fan comes here, Chiefs kick their butt, he gets in a fight on the way out, he puts a bad review on Yelp.
That's true. That's true.
Twins fans come down, the weather's nicer. They win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. They play around the golf. Oh, we had a great time. We love that place. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not 100% sure. Did you see that Community Notes tripped up KU on X yesterday? You know what Community Notes are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Community Notes are when something gets corrected. Elon Musk put this in. We're going to fact check things that are on Twitter. Fox College Basketball posted that Kansas had the longest wins appearance streak in college basketball. Community Notes corrected it and says, no, 2018, the entire tournament was vacated for KU because of cheating. And it was up for a long period of time, and now today it's down. The post is still up, and the Community Notes are gone. I don't know what to believe now. They had a link to an NCAA story that said essentially KU didn't play in that tournament.
That was a weird one because we all saw them play in the tournament, but they tried to take it away. That was the Final Four season, too, I believe.
I don't know what to do with it. But they got community noted, if you will. There's a metric if you're filling out a bracket. 19 of the last 20 teams were in the top 21 on offensive efficiency. Offensive. Also, they were in the top 37 defensively. 19 of 20. The outlier is 2014 UConn. Here are the teams that can win according to this metric. You want to name a couple?
I would guess Florida and Auburn.
Done. Both correct, yes.
Duke.
Yes. That's the top. That's 3 of the top 4.
Houston.
There's your top 4.
Okay.
They're all in the top 21 offensively and top 37 defensively.
Michigan State?
No.
Okay.
Tennessee, Alabama, Texas Tech, Gonzaga, Iowa State, Wisconsin, and Arizona.
Interesting.
According to the, 19 of the last 20, those are the teams that have a chance to win. I don't see it. Like, Iowa State's got an injury, so I don't see that.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, I think, is 37th in defense, like right on that number, so they're not good enough defensively. I'm probably looking top 20 or 15 defensively to go along with top 20 offensively, and that would narrow it down maybe to 6 of these. You probably just named them, but
it's a good metric.
It is a good metric, and it's fun to see teams that aren't those teams make it to the Final Four, but rarely do they go to the Final Four and win 2 more against the really good teams.
Yeah.
I think Duke might be skewed because the ACC was awful.
Mm-hmm. And if Cooper flags injury, too, he's got to be able to play to his highest for them to be able to go far.
They play Friday. It'll be interesting to see how many minutes he plays. He's scheduled to play. Really, they need him healthy beginning probably next week more than anything else. But I just wonder about that conference was really bad this year. The ACC was really, really bad. So I wonder if Duke is really they're number 1, by the way.
Louisville, the second best team in that conference, is an 8 seed, I believe.
Yeah, I know. They're 13th in the country and an 8 seed. I saw a thing that the last 10 years they showed the last 9 teams that were 13th in the country. They were all 2 or 3 seeds, and then there's Louisville this year as an 8. So they're like, you pollsters don't get it. Louisville isn't that good because they're in that conference. I guess that's what you get punished for. And my favorite moment of St. Patrick's Day was a video that I saw today of rock star, Ed Sheeran, pop star, Ed Sheeran. We know who he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Irishman, Scottishman. He's got to be. He's Irish. He was Irish. Wearing his Celtics jersey last night in Boston. He went to a pop-up bar, an Irish bar, and just popped up and started singing Irish songs.
That's awesome.
On St. Patrick's Day. And he was really good. And I think he probably knew the house band. I don't think he just stumbled in off the street. So he knew the people that were in the house band and got the thing set up. But that was awesome stuff. Thanks for listening to Uncanceled. The Vince Show is up next.